The myth of willpower. Why regulation beats discipline. The old story that keeps people stuck. Most people have been taught a story about success that sounds simple, tough, and motivating. If you want a better life, you need more discipline. If you keep failing, it must mean you do not want it enough. If you cannot follow through, it must mean you are weak. If someone else can do it and you cannot, then you must be missing something important, something called willpower. This story is everywhere. It is baked into the way people talk about weight, money, productivity, addiction, relationships, and even spirituality. Just do it. Stop making excuses. Try harder. You're either disciplined or you're not. The tone may be inspirational, but the effect is often crushing because it turns a human nervous system into a moral test. The problem is not that discipline is useless. Discipline is real. It matters. It is one of the ways we express love for our future selves. The problem is the way discipline gets framed as a simple choice that should be available at all times, regardless of stress, sleep, trauma history, or the demands of ordinary life. That framing quietly creates shame, because when you inevitably fall short, you assume the failure is personal. This chapter offers a different map. It does not remove responsibility. It removes a myth. It replaces the myth of willpower with a capacity-based model of follow-through. The main message is direct. Discipline collapses under overload. Regulation makes discipline possible. If you want to be consistent, you do not start by yelling at yourself to try harder. You start by helping your system become steady enough to sustain effort. This is why calm is an advantage. Calm is not only a mood. Calm is the physiological condition that allows the brain to plan, inhibit impulse, and keep long-term goals in view. When your nervous system is dysregulated, it is not that you have become a bad person. It is that your brain is running a different operating system, one designed for survival. And survival mode is not built for consistency. It is built for immediate action. If you have ever looked at your life and thought, why can't I just do what I know I should do? This chapter is for you. Because the answer is rarely because you're lazy. The answer is often because your system is overloaded. There is something deeply humane, even spiritual, about learning this. It softens the inner war. It invites you into self-leadership instead of self-punishment. It suggests that the path forward is not heroic force, but steady training. Not harshness, but skill. Not perfection, but capacity. Why willpower fails under pressure. To understand why regulation beats discipline, we need to be honest about what willpower is. Willpower is not a pure moral substance. It is the ability to inhibit impulses, stay aligned with a goal, and continue doing something even when you do not feel like it. That ability depends on real biological resources, such as attention, working memory, and the brain's capacity to weigh long-term outcomes against short-term relief. When you are regulated, those resources are available. When you are dysregulated, they are taxed. This is why willpower is so unreliable. It is not that you have it or don't have it. It fluctuates because your state fluctuates. If you are well rested, fed, supported, and not carrying a high load of chronic stress, it is easier to inhibit impulses. If you are exhausted, hungry, overwhelmed, and carrying unresolved pressure, inhibition becomes harder. The same person can look disciplined in one state and impulsive in another. Roy Baumeister's research on ego depletion popularized the idea that self-control functions like a limited resource. In this view, each act of self-control draws from a shared pool, and when the pool is taxed, performance drops. This model has been debated and refined over the years, and that debate is helpful because it keeps us from turning research into dogma. But the everyday truth remains clear. Self-control is harder when you are under strain. One reason the ego depletion idea resonated is because it matches lived experience. People know what it feels like to be spent. They know what it feels like to have a day full of demands and then to lose patience at night, to make a purchase they later regret, to snack mindlessly, to avoid the hard conversation, to pour a drink, to collapse into scrolling. They know that depletion is real, even if the exact mechanism is complex. Modern nuance suggests that what looks like depletion may sometimes be the brain conserving resources rather than being completely empty. In other words, the system may be saying, "This is too costly right now," and pulling back effort. That still supports the central point. Willpower is state-dependent. Whether you call it exhaustion or conservation, the practical result is the same. Under enough strain, your ability to do hard things decreases. Sendil Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir offer a different but complementary view in scarcity. They describe stress and lack as a bandwidth tax. When you are preoccupied with urgent demands, a portion of your mental capacity is consumed automatically. Even if you are not actively thinking about the problem, it is running like a background app. It draws attention. It narrows focus. It reduces the remaining capacity for planning and self-control. This is the most compassionate lens many people have ever encountered, because it suggests that follow-through is often not about character. It is about context. It is about cognitive load. It is about what you are carrying. If you want to understand why discipline collapses under overload, think back to Chapter 2. Under stress, the brain shifts toward fast, automatic processing. It becomes more impulsive. It narrows perception. It favors short-term relief. This is not a failing. It is the nervous system prioritizing survival. But it means that the very brain regions and functions needed for discipline become less available. In plain language, you cannot reliably do long-term wise behavior when your body feels like it is in an emergency. You can sometimes push through with sheer effort, especially if the stakes are high or the motivation is intense. But that approach is costly. It is not sustainable, and it often creates a rebound. You white-knuckle for a while, then you collapse. This is why people get trapped in cycles. They force themselves into change through intensity, then burn out, then interpret burnout as proof they are hopeless, then try again with more intensity. The cycle is not a lack of desire. It is a nervous system pattern. The real issue is not that discipline is false. The issue is that discipline is not designed to carry the full weight of a life. Discipline is a tool. Regulation is a foundation. A capacity-based model of follow-through. A capacity-based model begins with a different question. Instead of asking, "Why can't I be more disciplined?" you ask, "What is my current capacity and what would help it grow?" Capacity is not an excuse. It is an honest measurement. It is the difference between trying to lift a weight you cannot lift and training yourself to lift it over time. If you try to lift too much too soon, you do not become strong. You get injured. In the same way, if you demand too much self-control from a system that is overloaded, you do not become consistent. You become ashamed, depleted, and more reactive. A capacity-based approach also explains a strange truth many people have noticed. Sometimes a person can summon discipline when the incentive is large enough, even when they feel depleted. That suggests willpower is not a simple fuel tank. Motivation matters, meaning matters, stakes matter. When something feels urgent enough, the system can mobilize. But that does not mean the person can live that way all the time. It means they borrowed energy from tomorrow to perform today. The calm advantage is about not having to borrow so much. It is about building a steadier base so that follow-through becomes less dramatic. It becomes boring in the best way. It becomes reliable. This is where the discipline myth often harms people most. It teaches them to chase heroic effort instead of building quiet structure. It teaches them to rely on mood instead of designing support. It teaches them to measure worth by intensity rather than by consistency. A capacity model says something more humane. You do not need a better personality. You need a better system. That system includes your nervous system state, your environment, your routines, and the way you relate to yourself. Regulation is the process of supporting your system so that your higher capacities remain available. When you regulate, you can still feel stress, but you are less hijacked by it. You can still feel resistance, but you can keep going. You can still face discomfort, but you do not need immediate relief at all costs. Think of regulation as the ability to return to a usable state. It is the ability to move yourself up the ladder from shutdown or mobilization toward connection. And connection is the state where discipline is easiest, because your brain can plan, inhibit impulse, and remember what matters. This helps explain why some people appear naturally disciplined. Often they are not morally superior. They simply have more stable conditions. They may sleep better. They may have fewer chronic stressors. They may have more social support. They may have more predictable schedules. They may have fewer financial emergencies. They may have more environments that reduce temptation. Their nervous system is not constantly being asked to run on fumes. This is not a judgment. It is a reality check. It means that if you are struggling, you do not need to hate yourself. You may need to change conditions. And you may need to stop comparing your internal experience to someone else's external presentation. It also means that the calm advantage can be trained. If regulation is a capacity, it can grow. Not instantly, but gradually. Like a muscle, like balance, like any skill that improves through practice. Some research suggests that self-control itself can strengthen through repeated practice, much like physical fitness. That does not mean you can shame yourself into it. It means you can train it. You can train the pause. You can train emotional labeling. You can train small acts of follow-through that build trust with yourself. Over time, what was hard becomes less hard, not because life became easier, but because you became steadier. This is why regulation beats discipline. Discipline is what you do when you can. Regulation is what helps you be able. Useful analogies. Why try harder is the wrong tool. Analogies help because they bypass shame. They allow you to see yourself as a system rather than a moral failure. One of the simplest analogies is the smartphone battery. Imagine your willpower as a phone battery. Now imagine stress as a collection of heavy apps running in the background. Even if you are not actively using your phone, the battery drains quickly because the apps are consuming power. When your phone is low, you can try to force it to run demanding programs, but it will lag, overheat, and eventually shut down. The solution is not to scold the phone. The solution is to close the background apps, reduce unnecessary drain, and recharge. Regulation is what closes the apps and restores charge. Another analogy is the handbrake on a bicycle, which we touched earlier. Discipline is like pedaling. Pedaling is necessary to get where you want to go. But if you are speeding downhill and your brakes do not work, pedaling harder is not the problem. The problem is that you cannot steer. Regulation is the brake. It allows you to slow down enough to choose your path. A third analogy is the electrical panel in a house. When the system is balanced, the lights work, the appliances run, and you can cook dinner without thinking about wiring. Under a power surge, breakers trip. You might lose power in part of the house. You can shout at the lights all you want, but shouting does not restore electricity. You restore electricity by addressing the system, reducing overload, resetting the breaker, and stabilizing the flow. Regulation is the breaker reset. Discipline is what you do once the lights are back on. These analogies are not perfect, but they point to the same truth. The nervous system has limits. When those limits are exceeded, the higher functions that support discipline become less available. Try harder becomes the wrong tool. It is also worth naming something gently. Many people were raised in cultures, families, or religious environments where effort was the proof of goodness. If you were struggling, you were expected to push. If you were tired, you were expected to push. If you were overwhelmed, you were expected to push. Rest was treated as laziness. Softness was treated as weakness. Emotional needs were treated as indulgence. If that is part of your history, a regulation-based model may feel like a threat. It may feel like permission to be lazy, but it is not. It is permission to be realistic. It is permission to stop confusing self-attack with strength. Real strength is the ability to build a life that you can actually live. Real strength is the ability to create consistency without destroying yourself. Real strength is the ability to become steady enough to keep promises to your future. This is where the spiritual undertone matters again. Many traditions speak of gentleness not as softness, but as power under control. In Christian language, gentleness is often described as strength guided by love. In Buddhist language, compassion is a form of wisdom because it sees suffering clearly and responds skillfully. In secular language, self-compassion has been studied as a factor that improves resilience and behavior change, not because it excuses everything, but because it reduces shame and keeps people engaged. The calm advantage is aligned with this deeper wisdom. It is not about pampering yourself. It is about supporting your system so you can keep going. What to do? Instead, build regulation, then let discipline work. If discipline collapses under overload, then a practical question emerges. What do you do instead? The answer is not to abandon discipline. The answer is to place discipline where it belongs, on top of regulation. Regulation is what makes discipline available. So rather than asking yourself to just be disciplined, you begin to ask, what would help me be regulated enough to follow through? Sometimes the answer is basic. Sleep, food, movement, water, quiet, a break from constant inputs, a walk outside, a conversation with someone safe, a few minutes of breathing that slows the system. These are not trivial. They are the physical foundations of capacity. Sometimes the answer is structural. Fewer decisions, more automation, a simpler routine, an environment that reduces temptation, a calendar that protects recovery time, clear boundaries with people or obligations that keep you chronically activated. Sometimes the answer is relational. Co-regulation, repair, asking for help, letting someone else hold the rope for a moment so you can find your footing again. Sometimes the answer is spiritual, prayer as orientation, meditation as return, a practice of remembering that your worth is not measured by performance, a practice of surrendering what you cannot control and focusing on what you can. The details will unfold through later chapters, but the structure begins here. You regulate, and then discipline becomes easier. You widen your window of tolerance, and then you can do hard things without collapsing. You create safety cues in your life, and then your brain is less likely to demand relief through impulse. This also changes how you plan. Instead of making plans based on your best day, you make plans based on your real capacity. You stop designing a life for an imaginary version of yourself who never gets tired or triggered. You design a life for the real you, the one who lives inside a nervous system and a world. That is not lowering standards. That is raising intelligence. A capacity-based model also encourages a different relationship with setbacks. When you slip, you do not ask, "What is wrong with me?" You ask, What state was I in? Were you mobilized and urgent? Were you shut down and numb? Were you depleted and taxed? Then you learn from that. You adjust conditions. You build more support. You stop treating setbacks as proof of failure and start treating them as data. This is how regulated people become consistent. Not because they never struggle, but because they respond to struggle with skill rather than shame. They stay in the game. The calm advantage is not a personality trait. It is a trainable capacity. And discipline, when it is supported by regulation, becomes less like a whip and more like a compass. It becomes a steady commitment to what matters.